And thanks again for being here with us on News Now from Fox. So we do continue to wait here for a possible Rudy Giuliani to come out and make remarks after feds once again did a search inside of his home. We've been watching this all day, seeing a lot of law enforcement and feds going in and out of this Manhattan home that we continue to stand outside of. We also had that live update with Fox 5's Linda Schmidt. She gave us a little other side of the street look at all the media camped out here, as well as a great look at the building too. But what we want to do is keep things in New York City, where Comptroller Scott Stringer did make some remarks after some harassment claims came out against him. Let's go listen into those. I'm putting you in a double box so we can continue to wait here. If Rudy Giuliani steps out, of course, we'll jump into that live here for you on News Now from Fox.
All right, thank you all for being here. I feel it's important for me to address these allegations swiftly and directly. First, I want to make it clear that I unequivocally condemn sexual harassment of any kind. Sexual harassment is unacceptable. I believe women have the right and should be encouraged to come forward, and they must be heard. But this isn't me. I didn't do this. I am going to fight for the truth because these allegations are false. The behavior described is inaccurate and completely antithetical to the way I have conducted my life. I remember Ms. Kim well, and these are the facts. I met Jean in the late 1990s. She supported and donated to my campaign for public advocate beginning as early as 1999. She was a peer. She was not, absolutely not, an intern on the campaign. Our internship program was made up of college students, and she was not part of that. Jean was, as I recall, employed at the time as a publicist. She was an active supporter of the campaign. She has never worked for me in any capacity. We were friends for a period of years. For a several-month period around the time of the campaign, we had an on and off relationship over a few months. She was 30 and I was 41. This relationship started and ended before I met my wife, Elise. I believe it was a mutual, consensual relationship. I never used any force, made any threats, or did any of the things that are alleged. We maintained an amicable relationship for many years afterwards, until 2013, when we could not find her a role on my campaign for controller. I understand how painful it is to hear these allegations, but I urge everyone, including my supporters, to treat Ms. Kim respectfully and courteously. Any behavior to the contrary does not represent me or my campaign. I firmly believe every person must be treated with respect and dignity. I believe those of you who know me know my character, my record, and how I have always conducted myself, both in private and public. I want to thank my wife, Elise, for her love and her support. Elise is going to say some things, and then I'll be the one taking questions from all of you. Thank you for being here. Elise?
So I never planned on getting married, and if you know my relationship with Scott, my husband of 11 years, it might be hard to believe. But for most of my life, I was sure I'd be single forever. I was sure I would never let someone into my life that way. I've refrained from talking about it until now, and I don't want to dwell on it because it's a dark part of my past I've worked so hard to put behind me. But I think it's important to note today, for some context, that like so many women, I am a survivor of sexual abuse. As a teenager, and then a few years later, I was violated in ways that impacted me physically and emotionally. One of those was my ability to trust anyone. And then I met Scott. You know the rest of the story, but I want to make something clear. I didn't fall in love with him or decide to marry him in spite of my concerns about men. I did so because of them. In my entire life, I have never met a man more respectful of women and more committed to women's rights. I still haven't. And from day one, Scott has been a champion of women and a champion of me. In my entire life, what I'm trying to say is that I chose Scott because I felt safe with him. Safe in a way I didn't know possible. He listens to me, he protects me, he respects me. And although I'm his wife, I'm not the anomaly. So many of the female staffers who work for him now have been with him for years, even decades. And it's because they know the Scott I know. He listens to women. He protects women. He promotes women. He believes in women. And I do too. Like my husband, I have zero tolerance policy for sexual misconduct. It scarred my life too much for me to ever excuse it. I believe women, and I believe they should be heard, and I believe their claims should be investigated. And I'm so glad we live in a world where we're finally able to tell our stories. But that means I have an obligation to tell mine too, and to make sure my voice is heard. If even a fraction of what Scott has been accused of is true, I would not stand by him. I am not that kind of doting wife, and I would be the first person to walk away. But I know that with every fiber of my being, that isn't it. He doesn't use that kind of language. He doesn't engage in that type of behavior. He is the most respectful man I have ever known. And that's why I married him, and that's why I started a family with him, and that's why I'm speaking here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elise. I love you very much. It was a consensual relationship, and we had a relationship for several months. I can only tell you that what she said today is simply not true and not accurate.
Can you explain how she wasn't supported at the time?
I'm sorry.
How was she not a subordinate at the time?
I'm sorry.
How was she not a subordinate at the time?
She was a volunteer
For your campaign?
for the campaign, like.
She was subordinate.
No, let me. She was a volunteer, like almost every friend I had at the time, who would come and give out campaign literature, contribute to the campaign, just like many of my friends.
Mr. Stringer, do you have any thoughts or, I guess, speculation as to why Ms. Kim is coming forward, or if there's any idea that she may be working for another campaign, or there's some untoward intent with her coming out now?
I'm really here today not to speculate on that, but I can tell you categorically, unequivocally, with great assurance, the allegations made today are false and inaccurate.
You did say something about until the 2013 campaign couldn't find a role. Can you expand on that? Are you saying that this is, that was the falling out point between you and Ms. Kim?
She came for a job. She didn't get the job. There wasn't a place for her in the campaign. And after that, we weren't as friendly as we were.
When did your relationship with her end? When did your relationship?
No.
When did your relationship begin, and when did your relationship end?
It's 20 years ago, but it was some period during the campaign.
Like how many months?
I would think a couple of months.
So was there an attraction between the two of you? When you said it was an on-again, off-again relationship, what are we talking about?
We're talking about just having, a more intimate relationship that was not, that was just part of the few months of the time I've known her.
Is there ever an instance where, I know you're saying what she's saying is untrue, was there ever an instance where there was some confusion or some miscommunication between the two of you, or some argument that would lead you to think this perhaps is what she's talking about, even if the specifics are not, as you remember them? Was there anything that kind of went south?
No.
Did it end amicably?
As we were friendly up until we did not hire her during the campaign, and then we had the campaign, and that's how, we moved on.
Following up on Sally's question, Ms. Kimmons specifically said that you had said, "Why won't you fuck me?" multiple times in the cab. And so, going back to Sally's question, was there some sort of miscommunication in terms of maybe you misread signals?
No, let me say this.
Yeah.
I don't talk that way. That's not the language I use, and I didn't use that language ever with Gene.
With the power structure that we have today, do you support elected officials dating their staff, their campaign interns?
No.
So that's not what you did, right?
I did. Gene never worked for me. Gene never was paid by me. Was never.
$35.
I don't know what that is. No, I know, but I don't know what that I don't know what reimbursement that was for. But I don't think that was a salary.
She says that she admitted at her press conference today that after she, at some point in the 2013 controller race, she worked for your opponent, Elliot Spitzer. Do you think that when she didn't get the job with you, she was angry, went to work for him?
Strongly committed to achieving the monetary policy goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment and price stability. Today, my colleagues on the FOMC and I kept interest rates near zero and maintained our sizable asset purchases. These measures, along with our strong guidance on interest rates and on our balance sheet, will ensure that monetary policy will continue to deliver powerful support to the economy until the recovery is complete. Widespread vaccinations, along with unprecedented fiscal policy actions, are also providing strong support to the recovery. Since the beginning of the year, indicators of economic activity and employment have strengthened. Household spending on goods has risen robustly. The housing sector has more than fully recovered from the downturn, while business investment and manufacturing production have also increased. Spending on services has also picked up, including at restaurants and bars. More generally, the sectors of the economy most adversely affected by the pandemic remain weak, but have shown improvement. While the recovery has progressed more quickly than generally expected, it remains uneven and far from complete. The path of the economy continues to depend significantly on the course of the virus and the measures undertaken to control its spread. Since March, progress on vaccinations has limited the number of new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. While the level of new cases remains concerning, especially as it reflects the spread of more infectious strains of the virus, continued vaccinations should allow for a return to more normal economic conditions later this year. In the meantime, continued observance of public health and safety guidance will help us reach that goal as soon as possible. As with overall economic activity, conditions in the labor market have continued to improve. Employment rose 916,000 in March, as the leisure and hospitality sector posted a notable gain for the second consecutive month. Nonetheless, employment in this sector is still more than 3 million below its level at the onset of the pandemic. For the economy as a whole, payroll employment is 8.4 million below its pre-pandemic level. The unemployment rate remained elevated at 6% in March, and this figure understates the shortfall in employment, particularly as participation in the labor market remains notably below pre-pandemic levels. The economic downturn has not fallen equally on all Americans, and those least able to shoulder the burden have been the hardest hit. In particular, the high level of joblessness has been especially severe for lower-wage workers in the service sector and for African Americans and Hispanics. The economic dislocation has upended many lives and created great uncertainty about the future. Readings on inflation have increased and are likely to rise somewhat further before moderating. In the near term, 12-month measures of PCE inflation are expected to move above 2% as the very low readings from early in the pandemic fall out of the calculation, and past increases in oil prices pass through to consumer energy prices. Beyond these effects, we are also likely to see upward pressure on prices from the rebound in spending as the economy continues to reopen, particularly if supply bottlenecks limit how quickly production can respond in the near term. However, these one-time increases in prices are likely to have only transitory effects on inflation. The Fed's response to this crisis has been guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people, along with our responsibilities to promote the stability of the financial system. As we say in our statement on longer-run goals and monetary policy strategy, we view maximum employment as a broad-based and inclusive goal. Our ability to achieve maximum employment in the years ahead depends importantly on having longer-term inflation expectations well anchored at 2%. As the committee reiterated in today's policy statement, with inflation running persistently below 2%, we will aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time, so that inflation averages 2% over time and longer-term inflation expectations remain well anchored at 2%. We expect to maintain an accommodative stance of monetary policy until these employment and inflation outcomes are achieved. With regard to interest rates, we continue to expect it will be appropriate to maintain the current 0 to 1/4% target range for the federal funds rate until labor market conditions have reached levels consistent with the committee's assessment of maximum employment, and inflation has risen to 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time. I would note that a transitory rise in inflation above 2% this year would not meet this standard. In addition, we will continue to increase our holdings of Treasury securities by at least $80 billion per month and of agency mortgage-backed securities by at least $40 billion per month until substantial further progress has been made toward our maximum employment and price stability goals. The increase in our balance sheet since March 2020 has materially eased financial conditions and is providing substantial support to the economy. The economy is a long way from our goals, and it is likely to take some time for substantial further progress to be achieved. Our guidance for interest rates and asset purchases ties the path of the federal funds rate and the size of the balance sheet to our employment and inflation goals. This outcome-based guidance will ensure that the stance of monetary policy remains highly accommodative as the recovery progresses. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to support the economy for as long as it takes to complete the recovery. Thank you. I'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll go to Paul Kiernan.
Hi, Chairman Powell. Thanks for doing this. I guess since I'm first, I'll go ahead and re-up Howard's question from the last press conference. Is it time to start talking about tapering yet? Have you and your colleagues had any conversations to those effect? Thanks.
Thank you. So, no, it is not time yet. We've said that we would let the public know when it is time to have that conversation, and we said we'd do that well in advance of any actual decision to taper our asset purchases, and we will do so. In the meantime, we'll be monitoring progress toward our goals. We first articulated this substantial further progress test at our December meeting. Economic activity and hiring have just recently picked up after slowing over the winter, and it will take some time before we see substantial further progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jonelle at Reuters.
Okay, hi, thank you so much. My question is about what's going on with the virus and what if we don't reach a level of herd immunity per se? So in your scenarios, thinking about the outlook in the economy, do you have a model where you might start to still normalize policy, even if there's like a baseline of infections still going on, or how can you talk about how you're weighing those things?
Yeah. We have to leave questions about herd immunity and what that looks like to the health experts, but I would certainly say that what matters the most to the economic recovery continues to be controlling the virus. The economy can't fully recover until people are confident that it's safe to resume activities involving crowds of people. There may be people who are around the edges of the labor force who won't come back in unless they feel really comfortable going back to their old jobs, for example. And there may be parts of the economy that just won't be able to really fully re-engage until the pandemic is decisively behind us. But we've articulated particular guidance for tapering our asset purchases and for lifting off and raising interest rates. So for asset purchases, we've said that we would continue at the current pace of asset purchases until we see substantial further progress toward our goals. So, and that is what it is, substantial further progress. For interest rates, as I said a moment ago, we want to see labor market conditions consistent with maximum employment. We want to see inflation at 2%, and we want to see it on track to exceed 2%. So those are our tests. We don't have an independent test to do with the virus. I will say, though, as I started with, the path of the virus is going to have an effect on our ability to achieve both of those tests.
Great. Thank you. Gina.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thanks for taking our questions. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that test for raising interest rates that you just elaborated. You've obviously made it very clear that you want to see improvements in the real economy, in the real data, and not in just sort of expectations data before making that move. But I guess I wonder what happens if inflation expectations were to move up before you see some sort of return to full employment. It seems like a lot of sort of the stability in inflation has been tied to the fact that those have been so low and stable. And I guess I wonder how your reaction would be, or sort of how your reaction to that is how you're thinking about that.
Right. So it seems unlikely, frankly, that we would see inflation moving up in a persistent way that would actually move inflation expectations up while there was still significant slack in the labor market. I won't say that it's impossible, but it seems unlikely. It's much more likely that we would, having achieved maximum employment conditions, we'd also be seeing 2% inflation and be on track to see inflation moving above 2%. They tend to move together. So that's not to say inflation might not move up, but for inflation to move up in a persistent way that really starts to move inflation expectations up, that would take some time. And you would think that it would be quite likely that we'd be in very strong labor markets for that to be happening. If that actually were to happen, though, there's a paragraph in the statement on longer run goals and monetary policy strategy which says that when the two goals are somewhat in conflict, we weigh various factors, including the time it would take to get back and forth. So it doesn't really tell you what to do, but it tells you that we will weigh those two factors and how far we are away from them and how long it would take to reach them, were we to reach that sort of pretty unlikely state.
Thank you. Steve Leisman.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up on Janelle's question, and I wonder if you can help us understand better your thinking about how COVID infection rates and the virus calibrate with monetary policy. As you recall, we had a major resurgence in the virus last fall, and I'm wondering, would you need to be assured that there wasn't such a resurgence coming before you began, for lack of a better term, thinking about tapering? And what kind of comfort level would you need? Would it be something that would be declared from the CDC or the World Health Organization, for example, downgrading the virus from a pandemic before you had the comfort level to reverse course on policy? Thank you.
Yeah, we really have just articulated the goals that I've just mentioned a couple of times, which is substantial further progress toward our goals before we taper. Now, that's very likely for us to achieve that. It's very likely going to be the case that we've also made really significant progress on controlling the virus through vaccination and other. Those two things should more or less coexist. We haven't articulated a separate test for a state of the virus that we'd like to achieve, because we're not experts in that area. We're really focused on the economic outcomes. And again, my guess is that it's very likely, it seems to me, that for us to achieve the economic outcomes we would need to taper or to raise interest rates, we would also have to have made very substantial progress in getting the virus under control. Not necessarily fully under control. There is a possibility, of course, that we will have ongoing outbreaks over the summer, various regional outbreaks, and potentially next winter as well. But we'll be looking for substantial progress toward our goals, substantial further progress toward our goals as we think about tapering asset purchases.
Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria.
Hi, Chair Powell. I wanted to ask, you've talked a lot during this crisis about the need to have a lot of help from fiscal policy and monetary policy to make sure that there's not long-term scarring in the economy. And I was just wondering, given all of the policies that have been put in place, do you expect there to still be some long-term scarring? And if so, what are you most worried about? Where are you most worried about that showing up?
So I would say that we were very worried about scarring, both in the labor market, from people being out of the labor market for an extended period of time. The evidence is clear that it becomes much more difficult if you're out for a long time to get back in and get back to the life that you had. Same thing with these small businesses, many of which are the work of generations. Were we going to wipe out many of those unnecessarily? That was a big concern. I would say that so far, here we are in late April of 2021, we haven't experienced that level of scarring either in the labor market or among smaller businesses. So we're not living that downside case that we're very concerned about a year ago. Notwithstanding that, we're a long way from full employment. Payroll jobs are 8.4 million below where they were in February of 2020. We've got a long ways to go. And also, it's going to be a different economy. So we've been hearing a lot from companies that they've been looking at deploying better technology and perhaps fewer people, including in some of the service industries that have been employing a lot of people. It may well be, it seems quite likely, that a number of the people who had those service sector jobs will struggle to find the same job and may need time to find work and get back to the working life they had. These were people who were working in February of 2020. They clearly want to work. So those people are going to need help. And so while I would say we haven't seen really highly elevated levels of unemployment for, up in the teens that we thought we might have for an extended period of time, we've still got a lot of people who are out of work. We want to get them back to work as quickly as possible, and that's really one of the things we're trying to achieve with our policy.
Thank you. Rachel Siegel.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Chair Powell, for taking our questions. The housing market in many American cities is seeing booming prices, bidding wars, and all cash.
So we do just want to update everyone really quickly. In that top left-hand corner, we are awaiting possible remarks from Rudy Giuliani. Federal authorities have raided the Manhattan apartment of former President Donald Trump's personal lawyer. We saw a little bit of movement on that camera there. And so we're going to be keeping our eyes on that. We're going to take a moment to go out to a quick 2-minute commercial break. When we come back, we'll be getting a live update coming out of Wisconsin. We're talking about a series of different topics in the next hour here. You don't want to miss it on News Now from Fox.
Most people who got mortgages were people with pretty high credit scores. There wasn't the subprime, low doc, no doc lending practices were not there. So we don't have that kind of thing where we have a housing bubble where people are over levered and owning a lot of houses. There's no question, though, that housing prices are going up, and so we're watching that carefully. It's partly because there's clearly strong demand. There's just supply. Builders are struggling to keep up with the demand. Clearly, inventories are tremendously low. We're all hearing those stories. And if you're an entry-level housing buyer, this is a problem because it just is going to be that much harder for people to get that first house, and that's a problem. I mean, it's part of a strong economy with people having money to spend and wanting to invest in housing. So in that sense, it's good. It's clearly the strongest housing market that we've seen since the global financial crisis. And, my hope would be that over time, housing builders can react to this demand and come up with more supply, and workers will come back to work in that industry. So, it's not an unalloyed good to have prices going up this much, and we're watching it very carefully. I don't see the kind of financial stability concerns, though, that really do reside around the housing sector. So many of the financial crack-ups in all countries, all Western countries that have happened in the last 30 years have been around housing. We really don't see that here. We don't see bad loans and unsustainable prices and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Chris Rugaber, Associated Press.
Thanks for taking my question. I wanted to ask about the labor market. You see things such as in the Beige Book, you saw in the Beige Book anecdotes about businesses not able to find workers. Back to the labor market for fear of getting sick, childcare concerns, and so forth. Do you see these as also just sort of temporary bottlenecks that won't have much effect on the long-term health of the labor market? Or how are you thinking about these kinds of issues?
Chris, you were breaking up a little there, but I think I did get your question. So, yeah, I think there are a number of things going on there. The tension between a high level of unemployment.
All right, you've been watching News Now from Fox. That was Jerome Powell giving a little bit of an update when it comes to the economy. We're going to switch gears here and talk about kind of a lighter note. The Wisconsin State Fair is going to take place in accordance with health guidance guidelines at this time, obviously in the middle of a pandemic. But I want to bring in Fox 6's Gabrielle Mays. Gabrielle, what can Wisconsin residents be looking forward to with this fair?
Well, first, of course, Wisconsinites can look forward to some sense of normalcy, right? Because that's the thing. We've kind of been waiting for this to happen. So the fair is August 5th through the 15th. And of course, behind the scenes, there's been a lot of planning. So they've got 99 days basically until everything kind of gets going. One of the things that I did ask was just in regards to, are people going to be required to wear masks? And so that question was kind of not really wanting to be answered because they basically said that, right now we're not really going to answer that. We're kind of taking some time and, that will kind of be decided once we get maybe possibly a little bit closer. Of course, they're going to follow all CDC guidelines. Another question that I asked was just in regards to what's planned for this, right? So most things will kind of be somewhat normal. The other thing is that they're going to sanitize in between rides. They're going to have what they say hundreds of sanitation areas where people can basically use hand sanitizer. And then one of the other things is basically they say they have to make sure that, the food processing and all of that kind of stuff, goes back to normal. Of course, I talked to one of the vendors who's here. He says he's super excited. He gives out, of course, beer, sells beer as well as wine. And he's like, I'm super excited. Everything's kind of returning to normal. And, we can't wait until everything returns. So for the most part, not too much has changed. But of course, you have to wait and kind of see. They're not really releasing too much information. But for the most part, it's kind of just day by day. But it is happening according to them. So everyone's kind of really excited for that.
And Gabrielle, I wonder if you can just tell everyone what that Wisconsin Fair is usually like during a normal year.
Yeah, so I would say during a normal year, it's kind of you've got to have cream puffs, right? So I don't know if a lot of people know that, but that's just basically like this little. It's kind of like a pastry, but it's like a little bit more hardened and it's got like some cream in between. But of course, it's the food, right? Like Wisconsin food. You also have flavored milk, which I think is really interesting. I didn't try it the last time I was at a fair. It's been a few years. But I know I've heard that they've kind of got different flavors of milk, and that's kind of exciting. Of course, the rides are exciting. The games are exciting. But I think the food is probably one of the bigger things that is like the most exciting.
And everyone is ready to get out there. What's the acceptance rate for this? Do they think they're going to be selling out all those tickets?
Yeah, one of the things that they did do was they did send out a survey, and that survey was basically 88% of people responded said that they would be willing to attend this particular event, or at least a live event, something like this, either now or later in the future. And they also said 78% of people said that they would be in attendance. So tickets will eventually go on sale. Unclear if people will sell out those tickets or anything like that, because this is one of the bigger and first events that are going to be happening. But I think that for the most part, they're just kind of excited to have announced it, and they're kind of just waiting to see what's next.
All right, Gabrielle Mays, thank you so much for bringing us this live report. Always good to sneak in some exciting, fun news during the news day.
Exactly. Thanks.
And we're going to be stepping away from that to move into a story coming out of Chicago. There was videos of Chicago police fatally shooting 22-year-old Anthony Alvarez last month. This was in Portage Park. Today, videos were released, and right now there's some protests that are going on concerning this event. I want to play a little bit of that out for you. Then we're going to go out live to Chicago with Nate Rogers, our Fox 32 reporter, to kind of break down what all happened today.
Was murdered in cold blood. And he said the question the way he said so eloquently. In a time of pain, in a time of losing his life. Why did you shoot me? That's what he said. Why did you shoot me? And I have the question that needs to be resonate around this country. Why are you shooting us? Why are you murdering us? Why are these videos, as you see, it was edited because clearly you show where the cop gets to the scene, what was the reason for him being there. And he had his hand over the lens so you can't see everything is happening. So that's a cover-up. He was covering up evidence so that the world can't see what's happening. This is injustice, and we demand that DOJ intervene and launch an investigation on this case and fire this cop and reveal his name. What good is COPA if they're not going to reveal the name of who shot and murdered Anthony Alvarez? We see a ghost. Was it Casper the Snow Ghost? Was it Fred Flintstone? Who's the perpetrator? They run our license all over the place and put our name on blast for protecting this cop for the murder of Anthony Alvarez. And we demand answers. I'm going to bring the next speaker up. This is the cousin of Jacob Blake, who was also shot. Also, he got two family members. Also, the family member of Dante Wright, 2 cousins, were shot in his family. Come on up, bro.
Greetings, America. In the light of Anthony Alvarez's death, I felt that I needed to be here. It wasn't that I felt, I knew I needed to be here today. Just like him, my family experienced the same problem with police brutality, and I've lost one cousin due to it just recently. I just buried my cousin.
And we do want to move forward and show you some of that video that they are talking about. This is the video that was released of that deadly shooting of 22-year-old Anthony Alvarez. I'm going to bring in Fox 32's Nate Rogers to break it all down for us. Nate, you can see this video. We're showing it. It's pretty difficult to watch. Can you explain the developments that have come out today in Chicago?
The press conference that you all were just actually playing is a local rabbi here, local Rabbi Michael Ben Yosef. He and another community organizer here just wrapped up a press conference. I'm specifically calling out the police department, the state's attorney here, the mayor, calling this specific case, saying use of force in this case was, quote, excessive and unnecessary. Now, organizers of the protest saying they have several questions about this incident. Rabbi Ben Yosef telling me after screening the body camera footage, it appears Alvarez had no time to comply with officers' commands before he was shot. Ben Yosef also wondering why the officer fired his weapon, as video shows Alvarez running away from the officer with his back turned the entire time. Now, video does not show Alvarez pointing a gun at the officer involved. Now, this 22-year-old was shot and killed by a Chicago police officer on March 31st here in the city, on the north side of the city. Police have not said why officers were pursuing Alvarez in the first place. In an unrelated press conference earlier today, Mayor Lightfoot would not comment on the case, but she did say she's instructed the police department to take a look at its policy as it pertains to foot chases, because that is indeed what happened in this case. But many of the critics here are now talking about, they really want to know what exactly happened in terms of why police were chasing Mr. Alvarez in the first place, because that information, those details have not been released to us as of yet.
And Nate, I wonder if you can give people an idea of what this conversation has been like recently in Chicago as a whole. This isn't the first instance of foot chases and the conversation around that from Mayor Lori Lightfoot, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and it's not just this case. It's been several other cases. We just had the Adam Toledo case here in Chicago a couple of weeks ago where police body camera video was released. And so the department, the police department, the mayor's office is looking at that policy, saying they need to change some things. Nothing has been set in stone just yet. But right now there are police downtown here just making sure all of the protests and demonstrations are peaceful. I will tell you, we haven't seen a lot of, riffraff or anything going on. Everybody appears to be just demonstrating peacefully, just really wanting answers, because it appears that this is becoming a lot with so many of these cases, more and more nationally. It's becoming somewhat difficult for a lot of people involved.
And we heard a little bit of that, obviously, press conference protest that's going on in Chicago right now. Are we hearing anything else from the family of Alvarez? Absolutely. We've reached out to the family. We're waiting to hear back from them today. Yesterday and even earlier in the week, we do know that the family did have a chance to view the body camera footage, and the family even reportedly saying they want more information from the police department on exactly what happened. Why was Mr. Alvarez even considered a suspect? What did he do? Again, the point that a lot of folks are looking at is the fact that he was running, and he apparently had a weapon in his hand, according to police, but he did not raise that weapon, at least what the video is showing us. And so it's what our Civilian Office of Police Accountability is investigating right now, along with the state's attorney, and then the local rabbi here, Rabbi Michael Ben Yosef. He's actually calling on a federal investigation, saying that when it comes to these police-involved shootings, that the city, the state's attorney, the law enforcement here cannot handle it. And so the rabbi here actually wants the government to step in and investigate. Fox 32's Nate Rogers out there for us. Thank you so much for this live report. And we're going to take a quick commercial break here on News Now from Fox. When we come back, we're going to be previewing what is happening tonight, President Biden's remarks. We're going to bring in Fox 2's Rup Raj. We'll see you in 2 minutes. And welcome back to News Now from Fox, a live look from the White House right there. President Biden is set to deliver his first address to a joint session of Congress tonight, 2 days before he notches his 100th day in the White House. I'm going to bring in Fox 2's Roop Raj. Roop, we haven't seen you in a little while. Nice to have you back on the show.
Nice to be back with you. And I got to say, the new set here on News Now by Fox is pretty incredible. Congratulations on the new look. It's a great thing.
We appreciate that, Rup. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. So let's dive right in. We're hours away from this right now. So what are your expectations going into tonight?
You know, just reading pieces of the speech by both President Biden and also, of course, Senator Tim Scott, who's going to be doing the response, you're getting a lay of the land as to how this is all going to shake out. You're going to hear a president who's going to be talking about what he was handed. And that's going to be the big question here, depending on if you talk to Senator Scott about what he was handed and what the president believes he was handed. Two very different things. President Biden will say America is on the move again. One excerpt from his speech indicating that he's going to talk about what he was handed, which was a country in crisis, a terrible pandemic, civil unrest, of course, so much more that happened with the Capitol incident and what have you. And he's going to say he was handed all of those challenges. And from that, he's going to say there's an optimistic turn that he's helping steer, turning America to the right direction. On the other hand, you're going to hear from the Republicans who will obviously argue that President Biden was instead handed something pretty good. He was handed the keys to a turnaround that was already well underway, and that he basically, it's for him to ruin or him to help. And at this point, the Republicans are not happy with what they're hearing in terms of the price tags, Daytona, of some of these items that he wants to, of course, promote and that he'll talk about in the speech tonight with Congress, including $1.8 trillion. Yes, we're talking about the infrastructure plan and other programs to help Americans in need. So it's going to be an interesting night starting at 9 o'clock tonight.
And who can we expect to see tonight? Because not everyone could come. It was a pretty exclusive event.
No, you're right about that. You know, this administration taking social distancing pretty seriously. Even the First Lady, usually, as you know, Daytona, there's usually the First Lady sits right there in that special box in Congress, usually surrounded by guests. We know that this First Lady will be there, but will not be surrounded by guests. Usually the First Lady is surrounded by guests who have something to do with the points that the president is making. We know that there is a trans teen that will be in attendance, perhaps not right there in the circle with everybody. There's also going to be someone related to the DACA movement as well who's going to be there. There's going to be someone there who's talking about what it's like to be a first responder. So you're going to have some nurses perhaps in the House. And so the president, from what we understand, pretty interesting. He's known to practice the speech and practice it often. We understand he's doing that right now at the White House ahead of the big talk at 9 o'clock.
And Rup, I wonder how different this address is from addresses in the past. Can we touch on just the history of this type of situation, this type of platform for a president to be speaking to a nation, especially during such an unprecedented time as 2021?
No, you're so right about that. You really set the stage with that question because it is such an unprecedented time. And certainly anytime a president talks to a joint session of Congress, he has something important to say. In this case, this is the president who's very familiar with what it's like to stand behind that main chair where he'll be speaking from and in front of. For so many years, of course, for I think it was close to 8 years, he was right there. And before that, of course, he spent several years, 30 years, really on that floor watching several presidents being hailed as they walked in and criticized after they were done talking. He's that man tonight, and he has a lot to talk about. You know, when you talk about the civil unrest, when you look a little bit about the infrastructure challenges this president says that this Congress needs to address, he's going to have a lot to say. I think it's interesting if you really take a look at what happened on that floor or in that building just hours before. Just a few hours ago, the Senate voted to basically restore the Obama-era regulations, pushing back those limits on methane and gas emissions. And so that's something that was kind of a punch to the face to the Trump administration that worked hard to reverse that when they first got into office. And so it's going to be a war of words, whether or not we like it or not, between Senator Tim Scott after this president is done speaking and when the president is talking as well.
Yeah, of course, we'll be hearing both sides of this. You know, I'm curious on your thoughts in those first 100 days. He set out some pretty expansive plans. How do you think he's followed up on all of that when it comes to coronavirus and other things as well?
You know, he was pretty ambitious when he said he wanted to get 100 million shots in the first 100 days, and he went far surpassed that, obviously, looking at the production. But again, when you take a look at this very torn apart country when it comes to politics, you're going to hear the Republicans say, wait a minute, don't you remember it was President Trump who, of course, instituted Operation Warp Speed, which was the act to make sure that those vaccines could get produced in that record time. The Trump administration took a lot of pride in getting those vaccines ready to go. The distribution of it happened, as you know, under Biden's watch, and Mr. Biden, the president, is going to want to brag about that, talk about that, and really kind of tout the fact that he was behind that. So when it comes to the vaccine rollout, you know that right now there is more supply than there is demand in many areas. So his promise to get the vaccines out there, right on point. His promise to bring this country together, on the other hand, the Republicans have argued he just hasn't done that. We know for a fact that on May 12th, he plans to meet with, lawmakers, including McCarthy and McConnell. But a lot of people are saying, wait, this is a little bit too late. So many people have been wanting to meet with you at the White House to have that bipartisan talk, and that hasn't been something that Mr. McCarthy believes has happened thus far.
And Roop, we know that safety is obviously being brought into the equation for this, for the coronavirus, but also just safety in general. I want to speak about this January 6th insurrection that happened. What kind of role is that playing in the address tonight?
You bring up a great point, because when we say safety, you really mark the occasion by talking about the word safety, because we're talking about safety because of the pandemic. So we're talking about social distancing and the number of people that will be allowed inside. But that also, in turn, keeps the entire atmosphere more safe, all because of the security threats that have been there since January. And really, this has been one of the most secure buildings in the world, even before January. Many people argue that it wasn't on January 6th, and people are asking questions about that. But you better believe now, with the National Guard outside, troops from all over the country descending on Washington, making sure with their guns drawn, ready for anything that could happen. But we should mention that, of course, this is probably one of the safest places in the country tonight.
Such great information. Roop, one last question for you. Any bombshells to be expected? We know the former president, likely something would have happened tonight. What about President Biden?
You're right about that. With President Trump, there wasn't a lot of rehearsal from what I understand from some of the people that I've known in that administration. It was a lot of ad-libbing, whether it be at the debate before he was elected or the actual speech. He did read off a teleprompter, the President Trump did before, and had prepared remarks that were pretty polished when he addressed Congress. I think this president will do the same thing. I'm looking at some of the speech right now. It's the economy, American Jobs Plan. He's going to talk about who gets these jobs. I don't know that this is necessarily anything that's very shocking, but certainly he's going to be touting the jobs plan. And specifically, he says here, he's going to talk about who these jobs go to. He says at one point, let me speak to you directly, to the American people, the president says, he will say. And he will go on to say, independent experts estimate the American Jobs Plan will add millions of jobs and trillions of dollars in economic growth for years to come. He will then go on to talk about what kind of jobs these are, how many people without college degree or with an associate's degree can get these jobs. That's going to be a big, consumer touch point for this particular speech.
Roop Raj, thank you so much for giving this breakdown. Anything else to touch on before we go? We definitely appreciate having you back on the show. I'm giving a nice look around at the Capitol and the White House. We're definitely excited to be carrying this live here on News Now from Fox.
Well, I'm excited as well for everything that you folks are doing over there at News Now. Happy to be a part of it. And I think the biggest thing to look out for is after the speech, I don't think you're going to hear anything surprising. I think Senator Scott is not going to say anything surprising either. You're going to hear a lot of pushback. But the bottom line is, where do we go from here? What will happen with this proposal, this infrastructure proposal, this jobs plan? When we take a look at the future, May 12th, look forward to that meeting between McCarthy, McConnell, and then also there's going to be a meeting with President Biden and Pelosi, all in the same room at the Oval Office. That's going to be an important speech on May 12th, or an important talk, rather, between all of those folks in that room.
All right, Fox 2's Roop Raj, thanks so much for being with us. We'll talk soon.
See you around. Thank you.
And as we go into some of these live looks, I want to go out to Manhattan, where we are still awaiting possible remarks from Rudy Giuliani, former President Donald Trump's personal lawyer. So we'll keep our eyes on this shot. We know a lot of you are watching right now in anticipation of all of this. So we've got you covered here on News Now from Fox. We're going to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. watching News Now from Fox. We just wanted to kind of stay on this live look right here. We're awaiting possible remarks from Rudy Giuliani after a search warrant was executed. Federal agents carried out an early morning raid on Rudy Giuliani's home, which is where you're seeing this live look right now, likely linked to his business dealings in Ukraine. Fox News correspondent David Lee Miller is outside of Giuliani's New York City apartment with all of the details on that, and will of course be watching this live picture as well.
Federal investigators have executed a search warrant on Rudy Giuliani's New York City residence. 7 FBI agents showed up at his home at 6 a.m. and stayed for roughly 2 hours, seizing several electronic devices, including laptops and cell phones. A similar raid was conducted at his Manhattan office.
I'm stunned because I did know him when he was mayor, and I'm just surprised at the whole thing.
Giuliani, who served as former President Donald Trump's personal attorney, has been under investigation for several years over his alleged business dealings in Ukraine. Federal agents are looking into whether he violated the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, by lobbying the Trump administration on behalf of Ukrainian officials in 2019. FARA requires individuals to notify the Justice Department if they're acting as a foreign agent, and the warrant claims Giuliani failed to register as such.
Anybody, any American, whether you're red or blue, should be extremely disturbed by what happened here today, by the continued politicization of the Justice Department.
The former New York City mayor was home at the time of the raid, his lawyer, Robert Costello, calling it unnecessary, saying in part, quote, "If he was trying to hide anything, he could have destroyed all of that stuff back in November or December. Of course, we didn't do that because he's got nothing to hide." Costello adds, it was designed to, quote, "give bad publicity to Rudy Giuliani and make him look like he's some sort of criminal," which he's not. The full scope of the investigation is unknown at this time. So far, the FBI has not commented on the raid. In New York, David Lee Miller, Fox News.
So a different live look outside of the building right there, the podium all set up. Media still there. This is hours in the making. We thought this was going to happen a few hours ago, but still nothing yet from Rudy Giuliani. So if we do see any movement, we will, of course, bring that to you. As we said, though, we will be taking the live remarks from President Biden later tonight. We just got a really great preview from Roop Raj. We also have some other experts lined up that are going to break down everything that the president is going to be speaking about, also recapping what happens tonight afterwards as well. Lots to get to here on News Now from Fox, but I do want to take us back to another story that we were following in this hour. The video of a fatal shooting of 22-year-old Anthony Alvarez. This was last month in Chicago, was released today by COPA, and it is obviously sparking a lot of emotions from family members and community members. There was a press conference earlier today that was held in honor of Anthony Alvarez's life following the release of that video. So we're going to play that out for you. We'll also be keeping our eyes on this live look in Manhattan.
And he said the question the way he said so eloquently. In the time of pain, in the time of losing his life, why did you shoot me? That's what he said. Why did you shoot me? And I have the question that needs to be resonate around this country. Why are you shooting us? Why are you murdering us? Why are these videos, as you see, it was edited, because clearly you show where the cop gets to the scene, what was the reason for him being there. And he had his hand over the lens so you can't see everything is happening. So that's the cover-up. He was covering up evidence so that the world can't see what's happening. This is injustice, and we demand that DOJ intervene and launch an investigation on this case and fire this cop and reveal his name. What good is COPA if they're not going to reveal the name of who shot and murdered Anthony Alvarez. We see a ghost. Was it Casper the Snow Ghost? Was it Fred Flintstone? Who's the perpetrator? They run our license all over the place and put our name on blast for protecting this cop for the murder of Anthony Alvarez. And we demand answers. I'm going to bring the next speaker up. This is the cousin of Jacob Blake, who was also shot. Also, he got two family members. Also, the family member of Dante Wright. 2 cousins were shot in his family. Come on up, bro.
Greetings, America. In the light of Anthony Alvarez's death, I felt that I needed to be here. It wasn't that I felt, I knew I needed to be here today. Just like him, my family experienced the same problem with police brutality, and I've lost one cousin due to it just recently. I just buried my cousin, and when I seen the video get released by COPA today, it brought me back to a dark time, and I needed to be here because I know we need to defund the police. I want Kim Foxx to stand up, and she needs to stand up and release the name of the cop. To me, when I look at the video and I see Anthony running, his hands were up. And the question remains as he asks, why are you shooting me? But that's not the question I'm worried about. My question is, why are you chasing him in the first place?
That's right.
When I looked at the video, you never see them saying what they were stopping him for, what they were chasing him for. He's in a gas station getting chased by police. Any person like that would run, especially in the light of what's going on. His hands were up just like Adams, and he died. We need to defend defund the police. We need Kim Foxx. We need President Biden, and we need Vice President Kamala Harris to stand up and get the DOJs here. Chicago needs to be investigated. There's criminal acts within the police department. There is socially injustice all over the world, especially with the judicial system. So I'm standing here today with the Anthony Alvarez family in hopes that they do get justice. And I will not stop standing with them until justice is served.
That's right. That's right. One more thing I want to also bring up that was very telling when it comes to the police. When the officer said, cuff him, the other cop said, I'm trying to give aid to him. So he wanted this our brother to just die.
That's right.
Listen to the video. That other cop said, I need to go and do aid to a dying man. The killer cop said, cuff him while he's bleeding to death. That's barbaric. That's evil. The cop was trying to apply aid to save Anthony's life. But the killer cop said, cuff that criminal.
That's right.
That's what he said. Listen to the tape. No remorse, no empathy, no concern, no love for our people, just die. At all costs. That's what he said. And then there was another thing I want to also bring up. About when, if you look at the video, it's clear as day. There's no issue or any warning of why these cops are chasing him. There's nothing. All we know is just a pursuit. What was the reason? Anthony's mindset was to get away from harm. And what's wrong with that? His mindset was to avoid whatever behind me. I don't know if it's a gang member. I don't know if it's someone trying to kidnap me. Human trafficking is going on. Possibilities are endless. Anthony was not concerned about a cop running behind him. That's clear as day. And he said, why did you shoot me? What's the reason? I'm going to make sure before I leave this world that question is out there in the universe. And that question must be answered. Running from what? What was it? We can't run? Oh, we can't run? We can't have a hoodie? We can't have Skittles? We can't sit in our home? We can't have ice cream? We can't wear scarves without being murdered? So I want to just end it there. Do I have any questions, Nate, please? Y'all squared away? I did real good, huh? Okay, very good. All right, Shalom Aleichem. My name is Rabbi Michael Ben Yosef, R-A-B-B-I. Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Ben, B-E-N-Y-O-S-E-F. Thank you very much. You good? Was murdered in cold blood. And he said the...
So again, just a press conference earlier today in Chicago talking about that video that is released. We'll be following that, but we want to step into another story that we were following for weeks, the Derek Chauvin trial. Our Fox 9 Minneapolis team actually spoke with one of the jury members who kind of remembers what that experience was like sitting on that through all those days of the trial and hearing all the testimony on each side. So we're going to play out that story for you right now here on NewsNOW.
I think it's important for me as a person that is of the Minneapolis community and a black man to just get out and be visible, just because these are things that we need to do in terms of civil services, so jury duty, voting. Those are things that can help spark change. And with me being so visible, I can help spark some of those changes.
Juror number 52, Brandon Mitchell, says once deliberations started and a foreperson was chosen, the jury dove right into the manslaughter charge against Derek Chauvin. Initial vote, all but one on the 12-person jury agreed Chauvin was guilty. Within an hour, the jury was unanimous on this charge. Mitchell says then the next day, when deliberations picked back up, third-degree murder discussion took a few hours because of its complexity. But by the time jurors did a preliminary vote on second-degree murder, the discussion only lasted about 20 minutes. Again, only one jury member needing to be swayed to find Chauvin guilty on all three counts.
Did you feel pressure in any way?
I personally no, and I don't think any of the other jurors did either. Just because from being in the courtroom during the trial every day and having to witness on instant replay somebody dying every day, the stress of that alone, you don't even have time to think about pressure. That's enough pressure alone just to make the right decision, because you're deciding someone else's life and you're watching another person lose their life.
So really interesting conversation right there. We're going to go live now out to Austin, Texas, as Texas women from across the state, including religious leaders, mothers, grandmothers, women, lawmakers, parents and kids from across the spectrum are gathering outside on the steps of the Capitol to urge lawmakers to reject efforts to pass discriminatory legislation, what they are calling discriminatory legislation. So we'll listen in to what all of these women have to say again in Austin, Texas.
These sports bans would ban transgender girls from participating in sports in line with their gender identity. The only way they can play sports and feel safe and included. This means barring them from friendships, education, teamwork, and health benefits of playing a sport. It means creating an atmosphere of fear of who trans kids are. It means a return to bathroom day bills, back when they were fear-mongering and putting trans girls and women at an even greater risk of harassment and assault. And as a 40-year-old trans woman who transitions in 94 and 95, I remember being harassed, picked on, and assaulted junior high school, and college. And 1 star I do not recommend, just so you know. These sports bills also have intersection of racial justice. For the entire history of sports in this country, we have seen black women and girls discriminated against with ugly rhetoric used against them. It is no coincidence that the only example that the lawmakers has to point to is 2 black transgender high school track runners in Connecticut. We've seen this all across the globe with Caster Semenya, Duty Chan. We've seen it for about 10 years now, more than that. Girls won some of their races, but they lost some as well. but they are portrayed as a danger to white cisgender competitors. We know the weight of transphobia in Texas. From years ago, Christy Littleton to Nikki Aragoose, rest in peace. So many times, we know the weight of transphobia here, and it falls heavy on black and brown transgender women even more. Now they're trying to attack young girls too. The second type of bill, and I think the most egregious, are the medical care ban, which would criminalize or otherwise ban age-appropriate, evidence-based, private life-saving care for transgender youth. The Capitol is brimming with misinformation about transgender youth and who they are and what their medical care looks like. Don't believe them when they try to scare you. This is a scare tactic. This care is backed by credible medical association, all of them in this country. It is thoughtful and deliberate, and it has been proven again and again to be life-saving. Yet lawmakers want to strip away this life-saving care to intrude on the expertise of every doctor and medical professional in this state, to step into private family matters and take away kids' hope for the future. We cannot let this happen, and that is why we are all here. We ask you to stand with us to protect vulnerable transgender kids in this state and from yet another attack on their ability to survive and thrive. We have enough. We have had enough. And so I want to get the show started and introduce our first speaker, Heather Gothard.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for gathering here tonight, here in Austin, Texas, at our state capitol. And those of you watching online, thank you. Friends who have personally reached out, thank you. The trail racing community, Trail Racing Over Texas, for having my back, which I'm going to share tonight, part of my story. I want to say thank you. I have a lot of thank yous, but I wanted to start with gratitude first. Angela and her awesome team, thank you for making this happen. We actually just met for the first time today. And lastly, I want to thank everyone, you all, for having my family and myself be a part of this event, this rally here to support our LGBTQ community on behalf of family and friends. Bear with me here. I am not much of a public speaker. I chose a sport that requires minimal communication, which is running. I go out and I run for, anywhere from 50 to 100 miles, ultra trail running. So I'm out sometimes by myself for 20 plus hours without seeing people until I come into an aid station. It's kind of really nice, but, so yeah. Let's see, where do I want to start? All right, let's dive in here. So I've never really been one that's been attached to labels, or I've just kind of always been me, and that's all I've ever really known. Even from a very young age, I would say I'm a competitive, gender non-conforming female. As a kid growing up, I went against the grain. I was definitely a tomboy. At 7 years old, I actually came down and visited Austin for the Dallas Cowboys training camp, and I saw Troy Aikman, and I said, I want to be the female version of Troy Aikman with a vagina, basically. Laughter welcome. So I came back home, and I was so excited to tell my mom, hey, I want to play football. And she wanted me to be a cheerleader, but that definitely wasn't going to happen. And we happened to go down, and T-ball was my first sport to play. And we were there picking up, I think, some pictures, and football signups were going on. And I'm like, Mom, I want to play. And she signed me up and let me play football at 7 years old. I was the quarterback. I was the quarterback of my football team. And I led our league in touchdowns, and I wore number 8 because I love Troy Aikman. I was a Dallas Cowboys fan, still am, and so is this one. We'll get there later. But anyways, so yeah, that was part of my childhood. I had no idea. I was just being authentic and expressing myself. By 3rd grade, my nickname was Bam Bam. I saw the movie The Flintstones, and I had the whole chili bowl haircut, and everyone called me Bam Bam, and that was just me being me again. So yeah, moving right along. I will never forget, I have one football story I'll share. I played for 2 years and then quickly retired because I did get tackled. It was a rough sport, and I kind of started crying, and I remember my dad standing there looking at me saying, "Don't you cry." And I said, "That hurt though." So I transitioned out of football and I started playing other sports. I played basketball, softball, track. I kind of did it all. So one of my favorite childhood memories though was picture day. And this is when my mom finally, started letting me dress myself and pick out my outfits. So for 3rd grade, I chose to wear my Michael Jordan number 23 Chicago Bulls jersey. So I'm also a Michael Jordan fan, greatest of all time, in my opinion. But my mom did style my hair, so she got the curling iron out. So in this picture, I'm wearing my Michael Jordan jersey, my hair curled, and a big black bow. So, hey, creates balance, I hope. So my early childhood memories were mostly playing sports and chasing girls on the playground. Some things never change. I'm still chasing girls, just on the trail. But to me, that's the beauty, of being a kid, is because before society comes into play and tells us who we should be or who we ought to be, we're just being ourselves. I didn't know what being gay was, or I was just being me, and authentic self-expression, and that's what I stand for. I'm a firm believer in, thank you. People should be exactly who they want. I don't look at a person based on color, gender. I see human. And at the end of the day, I love everyone, and I support everyone. As long as you're not an asshole. So, to be fair. Yeah. And there are a lot of those out there, so beware. So moving on. So that was childhood. So today, like I mentioned earlier, my passion is ultra trail running. I got into running. I ran my first half marathon in 2016. Hated it. Found trail running in 2018. There was an instant attraction, just being out in nature and kind of just being one with the trail. That spoke to me. I started running 30Ks and 50Ks by 2019. I set a goal for myself to run 50 miles. My first 50-mile race, I won first place in the female. Wasn't expecting that. I literally just would show up, and I'm new to the sport, and trail running, if you don't know anything about it, it's the most open, inclusive, safe space that you could ever imagine. People are welcoming. It's all types of people, beginners to elite athletes, people running 5Ks. It's not all about the ultra distance. But yeah, it was a place of belonging. It was a place where I could go, and I've always loved to compete and make friends and just kind of share miles with people. You couldn't ask for a better community of people to run with, pace, crew, and volunteer at these events. So I'm going to start with trail racing over Texas, and I do want to give a shout out to Rob, who is the race director. There is no alcohol in this. This is Clean Cause Energy. This is an Austin-based company, just so you know. But this is my liquid courage. I recently competed in a race 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, on April 17th at Cleburne State Park, which is about 3 hours north of here. And I took first place in the women's, and that's not what this is about. I'm not here to brag on any of my accomplishments by any means, but I took 5th overall with the men. on Sunday, I raced on Saturday. On Sunday evening, I had received a message from Rob, the race director, basically saying that my name was attached to slander or some poor, uneducated comments that went online through social media outlets. And, you know, I was in shock because I honestly the trail running community is so friendly and inclusive and loving. I didn't even know what to say. I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I say something? And I said, can you shed some more insight? You know, what happened? So what had happened was, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but a person that I don't even know went online and said that I shouldn't have won because I'm a trans male athlete competing in the women's division. And that he is going to take this to lawmakers, legislators, the governor of Texas, to file that I cannot compete in trail running in any races, and that he's going to reach out to everyone all over the nation and let them know that I'm really not a female. Yeah, Boo is right. Yeah. That being said, you know, I sat with that, you know, for a couple days and, you know, felt those words. I ended up getting to see what he said about me. I know the last statement that he said was he hopes that I suffer maximum embarrassment. But, you know, I'm stronger than that, and I know all of us together are stronger than that. I'm not going to let some person who knows nothing about me, who's ignorant in my opinion, belittle me. And so I wanted to make a stand, and I wanted to show up today for everyone, not just me, but for all of you, because what he did was wrong on so many levels, and with everything that's going on today, I just wanted to be a part of this event. And I wouldn't be here today, actually, though, if it wasn't for my mom. She reached out to Angela, and that's why we're here. So I want to say thank you to my mom. And I also want to say thank you to my sisters and my niece who are here. And they come to all the races and are super supportive. So I think I'm running low on time, so I better wrap this up. So yeah, I just want to end with saying I stand here tonight on behalf of our LGBTQ plus community, friends, family. It's a great honor to be a proud gay woman, and I'm here for it, and I'm here for you. Thanks for letting me share. Love wins.
Hi, I am Heather Gothard's mother. I live in Granbury, Texas, and I never spoke publicly before, so bear with me. Heather did not want to share what was written about her, and let me tell you, this cut to the bone and broke my heart. So here we go. Today, Heather Gothard, born a man, which means she is a man, who identifies as transgender woman, was erroneously allowed to run in the women's division of the Coyote 50-mile trail run. She won the race by about an hour over the rightful winner, Vanessa Kelly. Mr. Heather Gothard finished 5th overall among the men. This is a travesty, unjust, and moronic. I will be sharing my outrage with the race director, the Cleveland City Council, the Johnson County Commissioner, the Texas State Legislature, and the Governor. This allowing of biological men being able to use transgender excuses to run against women is nothing more than a ploy for them to excel in sports and beat women because they cannot compete with the men. It is unethical and is the beginning of the end of women's sports. Rest assured, I will make sure there is a lawsuit, and I will make sure you suffer maximum embarrassment. With this said, this is a college professor from Collin County College. I'm not going to say his name, like he blasted my daughter's name all over social media, but He has gone to great lengths with probably 20 to 30 emails to the race director saying that he's going to take my daughter down, take TROT, Trail Racing of Texas, down, that my daughter will not be able to run as a female because she is not a female. I'm here to tell you that I gave birth to this girl. She's a female. I gave birth to her. She came out of my uterus. She has 2 sisters. She is female, a gay female, okay? And for somebody to say these hurt and damaging words, and being a mother, it's broke my heart. And that's why we're here to represent Heather. And all of our lives, I've taught my daughters to love. What are we to do? If you're an alcoholic, what do? You love them. If you're gay, what do? You love them. If you're transgender, what do? You love them. If you're a drug addict, what do? You love these people. So love is love. One more thing in closing. I'm a strong Christian, and I believe in the Bible, and I believe in love, and my favorite verse is John 13:34. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. In closing, I love everyone here, regardless of your race, gender. We love you. From the bottom of our heart, thank you so much.
I want to just break in here because we're getting some news out of the Los Angeles area right now of multiple people that have been stabbed. We're seeing emergency responders right now, what looks like to be treating possibly the suspect. We know the male suspect is in custody at the moment. We also have some information about the injured victims as well. We're learning that 3 people have been transported to local hospitals. If you're familiar with Los Angeles, this is the Exposition Park area of LA. And if you're just coming to us right now, multiple people have been stabbed. And it does look like, it does appear that the suspect is there on the ground, handcuffed, his hands behind his back. Emergency officials, police on the scene there. That's about really all the information we have at this moment, but we don't know a motive at this time. But on this Wednesday afternoon near Los Angeles, just got these live pictures from our affiliate there, Fox 11 in Los Angeles, of this midday stabbing.
I swear they have like 5 neat stories every afternoon.
And there you can see what does appear to be the suspect. They do have a male suspect in custody, and that person there, his hands are behind his back, handcuffed. And so this looks like it just kind of wrapped up here. I told you the victims have been transported to local hospitals. We don't know the status or the condition of those victims at the time, but we know 3 have been transported. And it does appear that the suspect himself looks injured as well, per the bandages on his head. So if we get more information on the scene here in the Exposition Park area of Los Angeles, we'll bring that to you. But like I said, we don't know the motive just yet, but multiple people stabbed there. in Los Angeles on this Wednesday afternoon. In the meantime, we want to go back out to Austin, Texas, and where right now in front of the Texas state capitol, many people, including transgender activists, are holding this press conference right now to support trans youth there in Texas. And this is in light of some anti-trans legislation that is up for a vote in the Texas state capitol. So let's listen in again to that.
When you consider the broad range of physical abilities across genders. To those saying that boys and men may lie so that they may participate in girls' and women's sports, this isn't happening, it won't happen, and it's a ridiculous assertion created to designed to create fear. No one would choose to be a part of athletic programs that are across the board more likely to be underfunded and undersupported. If the U.S. women's soccer team cannot even make anything close to equal pay with their mediocre men's counterparts, then there is clearly no incentive for anyone to lie about their gender to participate in women's and girls' sports. If these lawmakers truly cared about supporting women in sports and girls in sports, they would be advocating for more funding and resources to be allocated to these programs. I'm here with you tonight because I know that trans rights are human rights. To my larger LGBTQ plus family, I ask that you join me in coming together in support of our trans family, who I know, despite immense strength that I have seen in that community, is struggling, hurting, and vulnerable, especially right now in the face of hateful attacks. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Celia Israel and I'm a member of the Texas House of Representatives. Nothing happens inside that dome without pressure outside the dome. And we really appreciate you being here, telling your story, being with your family, being you, being your true self. But I want to introduce you to my colleagues. And we have some amazing women and men who are joining us here tonight who are with you in this fight. So my job is going to be to introduce them briefly, and Representative Gonzalez from Dallas is going to say a few words. So we'll start with some of our newbies here. Penny Morales-Shaw is from Houston. Big Houston hug. Liz Campos is from San Antonio. Ann Johnson from Houston. And then we got Aaron Zwiener from the Hayes County area. Super sophomore. John Rosenthal, also from Houston. And I don't want to skip anybody. We got our chair of the Democratic Caucus, Chris Turner from Arlington. Gina Hinojosa, small but mighty, from Austin, Texas. Julie Johnson, the badass of all the badasses, from Dallas, Texas. And my queen, our hero, the great Donna Howard from Austin, Texas. We're all going through a very, very difficult time. And we know that you're going through a difficult time too. We're trying to minimize the harm that we're doing and focus on those big issues. We're in the middle of a pandemic, we're in the middle of an energy crisis. We're trying to get these guys and gals to focus on what's really important to Texans. Your voice is really important. We're not all going to be able to speak tonight, and we're going to be leaving, but I wanted my colleague Jessica Gonzalez from Dallas to say a few words. Rep. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Representative Israel. And thank you everyone for being here, tonight. We've been fighting this entire session. We've seen horrible pieces of legislation filed, over 30 that have been filed already. But thanks to everybody who's standing up here and then some, on all of you who have been helping us. I mean, we've been able to stave off these bills getting to the floor. We've been able to, yes, we've had committee hearings, but it's because of us fighting and you guys fighting and your testimony and you driving miles and miles across Texas to be here to testify. So don't ever think your voice is not important, because it is. And so I know you're going to hear from several people here, but what I do want you to know, and what I want you to walk away with, is that all of us here are going to fight every single day to make sure that our laws actually reflect our values, because people of Texas don't want to discriminate. And studies show that, and it's time that our laws reflect that. And so we're going to fight every single day until our laws reflect our true values. Thank you. And now I will pass it over to Aaron Zwiener, who is the Secretary of the LGBTQ Caucus.
Thank y'all so much for being here. I want to share a just short story from my sports days. I played every sport they'd let me sign up for. And I was not like the previous athletes you heard from. I was not elite. But I played and I had fun and I learned so much from that experience. And that's the experience most of our student athletes have. Most folks aren't going to go play professionally. Most folks aren't going to get a scholarship, but they're going to learn about teamwork. They're going to learn about persistence, and they're going to take those life skills and use them everywhere in life. And it's an opportunity all of our children should have. But the story I want to share with y'all, when I was in middle school, I went to a small private school here in Austin, and there was a flag football league. And I was one of 2 girls to sign up to play in the flag football interscholastic league. So it was a lot of fun. I played defensive end. There was the other girl in the league played quarterback, and I'm starting to wonder if she just spoke a little while ago. But what I learned playing defensive end is the boys will always underestimate you, and you'll get 1 sack in before they, get concerned. And I played. My coach had to stand up for me with coaches of other teams. And the year or after that season, they passed a new rule and said boys only on the flag football team. And the reason I say that is because it underlines what we all know. Nothing about this legislation is about protecting girls or women. It is about pushing people into boxes and keeping them there, because that's what some folks, a minority, but a loud minority, are more comfortable with. So we have to be louder. We have to be louder and say, yes, we are feminists. Yes, we support girls and women. But our feminism is about breaking down barriers, not building them up. And our feminism absolutely 100% includes trans women and trans girls. So that's why we're here. I want to echo what Rep. Israel said. We need y'all to be loud and continuous and persistent in making sure that none of these hateful bills become law. And I believe we can win, and I believe with you at our backs helping us in the building, we will win. So thank you for being here. Let's finish out this session strong. I'm going to hand it off to the LGBTQ Caucus Treasurer, Julie Johnson.
Now I know why Aaron always likes to play in the member flag football game. Thank you all so much for being here. But I want to address my comments to a broader audience. Because you here are here in the fight. You all here understand the significance of the work that we're all trying to do here. But, I'm a lawyer, and, I actually handled a Title IX lawsuit. And I can tell you that Title IX is nothing about discrimination. Title IX is only about equality and fairness. And this argument that Title IX somehow prohibits trans kids from playing in sports is the most absurd argument I have ever heard in my legal career. So let's just dispel that right here and now. Title IX was created for fairness, equality, and equal play. And that is what this effort that we're fighting for is about, to have fairness, equality, and equal play for every athlete in Texas, not just some athletes in Texas. Secondly, I want to really comment on something I think that's been overlooked in this discussion, which is right now we have a state government of Republicans who advocate for less government all the time, right? That's what they say. We want less government. But what they're trying to do is put the government right in the middle of the parent-child relationship. And that is not okay. You know, parents have the right to make the decisions for their children that are in their children's best interests. And I resent, as a mother, I resent the government trying to come in here and tell me how I can or cannot parent my children. And I'm sure that each one of you feel the same. And to the broader audience out there, you feel the same way too. You want to have the right to make decisions about the health care of your children, about the education of your children, about what sports your children play. Many of you advocate for the right to make decisions about vaccinations about your children. And they make these arguments and these rights to have exercise of parental control. But what this legislation and this package of legislation is doing is saying the parents of trans children don't have the right to make those decisions. And that is not okay. And the broader audience needs to see that that is not okay and to stand with us in this fight. I just want you all to know that each one of us up here value each and every one of you for who you are and all the talents that you bring. And it is with every dying breath that we have that we're going to fight for your full rights to be and to live in the fullest extent of the happiness that you are deserved and that you're entitled to. And that is our solemn pledge to you. So thank you so much for coming out.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Campos, representative from San Antonio, Texas. And I just want to thank each and every one of you and know that I admire you for who you are and for what you believe in and for standing up for your family. And know that me and my colleagues will fight for you to the bitter end. So you've got our support. And again, thank you for being who you are and do not give up the fight.
Angela?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Elder, and I'm a 15-year-old trans man. I'm here today to speak about these attempts to ban life-saving medical care for teens like me. I was born in the wrong body, and I had no say with it. It isn't a choice to be trans, and I didn't choose discrimination. We know at least 2/3 of trans youth have reported recently self-harming, and we know 42% of trans people have attempted suicide. We also know trans people are 2 times more likely to think about or attempt suicide than the rest of the queer community. We know this because of the way we are treated by society and by the politicians. We know these things, yet more than 20 states have introduced this type of anti-trans bill this year. On my journey as a young trans man, my parents have been my biggest advocates. They help me access the medical care I rely on. My physician has been helping me for 4 years now, and I finally feel like I'm in my own skin. However, these bills, especially the ones about limiting trans health care, scare me. What will happen when thousands of trans youth are denied medical care? What happens when I am unable to access my ongoing health care? It would be devastating. I would be a person I'm not. My hopes and dreams would be crushed. Healthcare for trans people is proven to save our lives, and you are not keeping us safe if you are taking the thing away that is saving us. If you want to prove you care about us, listen to us. I ask for your help, parents, allies, friends, family, and bystanders. Let's stand up for trans people across Texas. Together we can help end these bills trying to marginalize the trans community. And here's my mom.
Good evening. My name is Ann Elder, and I am the very fortunate person to be this kid's mother. I just want to say a few things. One, I have a younger brother who is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. He has been helping children achieve their physical potential for over 40 years. And I see no difference in what my husband and I are doing for Ben. I ask that you eliminate these bills. Thank you.
Next up is Indigo Giles.
Hello, my name is Indigo Giles. I'm 19 years old and my pronouns are they, them. I'm a born and raised Texan and a student at UT just down the way. And here I am. This session has been my first foray into the political sphere, and y'all, I am exhausted. These past couple of weeks have been the longest and most tiring weeks of my life. 2 Wednesdays ago, I spent over 16 hours here at the Capitol, and I only got to speak on one of the 2 bills I had come to testify against. And I was one of the lucky ones who got to speak at all. My academics took a major blow, and yet I still came again the next week because the sheer amount of bills designed specifically to hurt me and my trans siblings means that I do not get to rest. We are so tired of constantly being humiliated, excluded, and treated as a monolithic other to be feared. These bills, which serve to other trans kids, force them into places they do not feel safe or comfortable, and strip them of their dignity and autonomy, set a dangerous precedent. What bills will come next? What form of discrimination will be legalized next? Bill supporters claim that they just want to protect children and keep them safe. This is not keeping trans children safe. In fact, it's the opposite. The sports bills will force trans kids into spaces where they will be opened up to humiliation, bullying, and even violence, all in the name of solving a problem that quite literally does not exist. Trans children just want to fit in, and for many of them, sports is one of the only places they feel like they belong. Sports is a safe place for children to deal with their social and mental health, and taking that away would deeply negatively impact the health and safety of so many children. Do not take this from them. And the healthcare bills that are attempting to strip us of our right to medical care, they terrify me. They make me so angry that I feel sick to my stomach. These are decisions that should be made between us and our doctors, not between legislators that are butting into things they know nothing about and who are just trying to score political points or push a line in a stupid, made-up culture war. These bills will take away access to care that is literally life-saving, and there will be consequences in the forms of lives lost. We will have to pay the price. The public opinion is overwhelmingly against these anti-trans bills. Florida is already seeing massive pushback. Arkansas is already seeing massive pushback. And mark my words, I can guarantee Texas will see massive pushback too if the folks in there allow these bills to go any further. They need to stop hiding behind their falsified statistics and inexpert witnesses and listen to us. Stop meddling in the lives of trans children and just let us be. Thank you.
All right, then we're going to step away from that right now. We have just some aerials that we want to show you. This is coming out of the Los Angeles area at the moment. This is called the North Fire. It's about 150 acres right now. A couple neighborhoods are facing some evacuation orders. And there you can see the flames are burning quite intensely there. This is just north of Santa Clarita. You can see the fires are right there on these power lines and these electric grid. This is coming to us from Fox 11 in Los Angeles, our chopper there who's capturing this right now. This is happening live. Being told this is about 150 acres in size. We don't have any update yet as to if any of it is contained at the moment, but we'll be monitoring that here as well. If you're just coming here to News Now from Fox, we're monitoring this small brush fire right near Santa Clarita, California. About 150 acres are burning, threatening a couple of neighborhoods possibly. We're learning that some evacuation orders are in place. We can't get a sense just right now of how close this fire is to those neighborhoods. You can see some of the emergency vehicles there on the scene trying to assess the situation. But the smoke is just billowing up over the hills there. This is a better kind of zoomed out vantage point. We're not sure yet either if some containment efforts will be made through planes in the air or dropping, flame retardant on it or the like. That right there, that's the majority of the flames, very, very intense. So it looks like we're just seeing, though, that an aerial attack is underway at the moment. They're trying to get this under control. There you can see the fire engines on the side of the hill right there. And so they are forcefully trying to extinguish this before it spreads any further. And there you can see the neighborhoods bordering this right now, right near Santa Clarita.
Definitely beginning to
So you can see how close this fire is to these neighborhoods right now. This is happening a little before 5 p.m. on this Wednesday afternoon, and fires are burning very, very intensely. We could be seeing another aerial attack come by, dropping some flame retardant on this fire, but we saw other emergency response vehicles on the ground. You can see the smoke, though, billowing up over that neighborhood. We're getting a little more information, though, on this fire at the moment. Mandatory evacuations are now in place. Remember, this is called the North Fire. But those evacuations now in place: Iron Village Drive in Valencia, Sterling Court, Valencia, Rye Canyon Loop, Valencia. And there you can see just a much, much better vantage point of the size of this fire. We're being told it's just about 150 acres. We don't have any information yet on percentage contained or contained at all. Definitely concerning, no doubt, to those residents who are in its way.
This is Doug. Hello.
All right, so we're just looking at these really, really crazy, stunning pictures right now of the North Fire. We're looking at this, and it looks like the flames have come up over this road there. It looks like they're threatening some of those tanks, those massive tanks at the moment, but we know some evacuation orders are underway, mandatory evacuation orders for some of these neighborhoods that are threatened by this fire at the moment. We're learning right now that about 150 acres are burning. Obviously, that number can change whether containment efforts are successful or it spreads. We don't know, but it looks like this is spreading at the moment, and we're going to be speaking with some experts right now to get a sense of how exactly do firefighters go about containing something like this. All right now we are going to be bringing in one of our guest experts, former Phoenix Fire Chief Doug Mummer, to talk about what we're seeing right now. Doug, kind of explain to us, how does something like this get contained, and what do firefighters do at this exact moment? Are they going house to house, or are they plotting their attack at the moment to try to contain this?
Hello, Andrew. Typically, what we do on fires of this nature, as with any fire, is we try to protect the exposures. The area that's in the center of the fire, that's just virgin land, if you will, that area we can let burn while we protect the exposures and make the evacuations. And typically, we get law enforcement to help us with the evacuations.
And I don't know if you can see what we're seeing right now, Doug, but this fire, are firefighters right now concerned about, the possible spread? They've already issued mandatory evacuations for some of these neighborhoods. But at the moment, is that what their main concern is, or is it making sure this does not spread?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Basically, it's to protect life and property, and they're experiencing similar weather as to what we're experiencing here today with the high winds. And when you're talking about wildfires, especially in the urban interface area like this, where the homes go right up to these open areas, when you have high winds and low humidity, that's a real recipe for disaster. So what you want to do is protect those properties and evacuate them until you can get control of the fire.
At this time of year, though, Doug, from someone who doesn't watch or track fire season and these brush fires, is this normal, or is this out of the ordinary for this time of year? We just saw some of those planes go by dropping that flame retardant to try to stem this.
The spring is the busiest time of year for firefighters when it comes to wildland firefighters. It's typically kind of a dry season in Southern California as well as Arizona, and it can be breezy with the change of the weather patterns, when you're switching from low pressure to high pressure and back and forth like we have been here we were on a cool streak the last few days, and the same weather we're experiencing today, they had yesterday. So we're going to have the heat going up over the next few days and the humidity going down. When you mix that with drought conditions, you can really have some problems. So they do have air support, which is the best way to fight a fire of this nature. And you can see they're putting down the fire retardant. That's the pinkish red substance. It's not designed to put out the fire. You don't put it directly on the fire. You put it ahead of the fire, and it basically stops the fire from crossing it.
All right. Well, we want to thank Doug Mummer on the phone there, retired Phoenix, Arizona fire chief. And we can see the fire still going, residents under evacuation. We're going to go out now, though, to Los Angeles police giving an update on this off-duty police officer who was shot this afternoon.
Investigation of an officer-involved shooting or any type of serious categorical use of force. On my right, immediate right, your left is Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher. He oversees Detective Bureau, and within that are the assets including Robbery Homicide Division, which will have an investigative role in today's events, as well as he's within his command responsible for the officer this off-duty officer that was involved in today's incident. On his immediate right is Commander Alan Hamilton. He's the commanding officer of Operations Valley Bureau. He oversees the commands of 7 commands here in the San Fernando Valley. This is the Van Nuys area, and it's within his command that this incident occurred. And then Battalion Chief Hernandez. Battalion Chief Hernandez and the men and women of LA Fire responded today, and I'm grateful to you and your staff for the life-saving efforts that you made with our officer as well as with this offender, this individual that's in our custody. So earlier today at about 2:25, the information I'm about to present to you is extremely preliminary. It's based on first and second-hand information And the effort here is to provide you with the four corners of what has happened here today, what we believe we have, and the path forward. So today at about 2:25 in the afternoon in the 5200 block of Vesper, which is behind me about a half block, we have an off-duty officer who is joined by another individual. They come downstairs from their apartment and they go into the subterranean garage. In the subterranean garage are locked and secured garage compartments, if you will, where vehicles are stored by the various tenants. In this locked and otherwise secured compartment is two vehicles. One is covered with a car cover. The other one, and the other one is his other personal vehicle. As the officer comes downstairs, he's in plain clothes, and he discovers an individual seated, a male Hispanic, seated in his vehicle, in the officer's vehicle. And then he notices that this individual is wearing what appears to be the officer's bulletproof ballistic attire, his bulletproof vest. The officer realizes that inside this vehicle he typically secures his bulletproof vest as well as other equipment, including a firearm. The officer, fortunately, has with him his own backup weapon. As he confronts the suspect about this burglary into a vehicle, an altercation ensues. That altercation turns into what we believe to be a gun battle between the both of them, with the suspect using the officer's primary duty weapon and the officer defending himself from that attack. This ensuing altercation goes through the subterranean garage in an easterly direction to the backside of this apartment and into an east-west breezeway, where the suspect is then struck at some point during this altercation, this rolling altercation, is struck and falls to the ground. He is at that time, or in the midst of that, taking the bulletproof vest off, and the officer goes and secures his firearm, his primary weapon, from the suspect. And that officer then goes back to his vehicle inside the subterranean garage, rejoins with the other individual that he was there with, and places those guns next to the vehicle and collapses as he has suffered multiple gunshot wounds, two to the chest and one to the thigh. Responding units as well as LA Fire respond. In the first set of units render aid to our officer as well as discover our suspect, who is still down, suffering from gunshot wounds, one to the shoulder, one to the arm and leg, and he is in that east-west breezeway, and it appears at this point from initial statements that he is throwing the officer's firearm magazines over a fence, so shedding things that he had gathered. The officers that respond find our officer, render him immediate aid as there's fire. He's transported to a local hospital where he's presently stable but undergoing surgery for the seriousness of his wounds. I was there, I spoke with him before he went into surgery. Obviously these are very traumatic injuries, and he is grateful to be alive, but he is not out of the woods yet. He is stable, but again, he is going into surgery for the extent of the injuries he suffered. The suspect that was arrested at this scene was also transported to a local hospital. He is in stable condition, and I have no further information on him. From the scene, I have not done a walkthrough, but from the personnel that have done an initial walkthrough, we have an officer's duty bag, which is basically nothing more than a canvas bag, that typically canvas that you store your books, your equipment in, that is secured inside his vehicle. That is outside of his vehicle, and it appears that this suspect, at this point, it's conjecture, somehow gained entry into this compartment, this locked and closed garage compartment, gained access into the vehicle, and in process of removing or going through that duty bag, takes possession of the officer's primary weapon, as well as dons the ballistic attire, and that's what has resulted in today's incident. What we have here is a investigation now that goes forward that involves Force Investigation Division because of an officer-involved shooting, Robbery Homicide Division because of the attack, the assault against the officer by this individual. We have the District Attorney's Crimes Against Police Officers here, as well as the District Attorney's Office for the officer-involved shooting rollout team. We'll move forward in the coming hours. This is again very fresh, very young in this investigation. I want to give you a status in conclusion. I am grateful. At the same time this is happening, we have an attempt murder that happened in West Valley involving a security guard and two other individuals, and a shooting that's happened. And we're currently investigating an attack on early reports involving a family, involving young children that were attacked by another family member. So we are in trying times, and these are difficult times for all of us as we come out of this pandemic. But what I ask for all of us to do is to keep all of our police officers in your prayers. They come upon these situations on and off duty, and they're challenging these life-challenging circumstances. They're caused to make split-second decisions, and I'm grateful that in this instance he apparently will survive this attack from what started out as a burglary, or what started out as simply a theft into a vehicle. So the senselessness of this escalating to this level of violence is really just, it has me extremely troubled in the concert of when you see the other violent acts that we have going on around us. So with that, I'll take any brief questions, recognizing that we're very early into this.
What about the friend of the officer? Did you say there were two that went down?
So that there was a female companion that was with him. She is uninjured. I'm thankful she's unhurt. She's given us some information as to the facts and circumstances of this, which I blended into my remarks. But she accompanied our officer there and witnessed the initial encounter, and is with the officer currently at the hospital, supporting him as he's going through this ordeal.
Civilian?
I have no information that she's associated with the department.
What's he doing for your department, Chief, and where's he
Hold on a second, I'll get there.
Any indication at this point this may have been a targeted burglary, that the man might have known that that car belonged to a police officer, or was this just random? You think he was just breaking into whichever compartments he could easily gain access to?
Our investigation will look at all avenues of this, Pete, but given the nature of incidents of burglary and theft from vehicles, we think this was likely a random event and not one that was targeted. I will say that in this last year, we have seen thefts from vehicles involve an increase in the number of stolen weapons, stolen guns. 45% increase last year in the number of guns stolen from vehicles. So, it goes to the security of these weapons and making sure that we lock and secure them whenever we can. Well, no, come back to you.
Chief, what does the officer do for you, and where's he working?
I'm not going to give his assignment yet because we're still in contact with his parents and others. But he works out of the Detective Bureau. He's a police officer, so our base rank, if you will, and a professional.
All right, we're going to step away from this right now, but police there in Los Angeles giving an update on that incident from earlier this afternoon where an off-duty police officer was shot. That suspect, though, in custody. But we're going to move on to some stories right now. Remember, we've been following the ballot audit in Maricopa County, Arizona, that started last week. We're going to get some more updates. A lot of legal action has been taken, especially today. We're being joined by Fox 10's Matt Galka to break that all down. Matt, a lot of court proceedings happening today. What went on, actually?
Well, of course, a lot of legalese, as is pretty standard par for the course for matters like this. But here's the bottom line. The audit is not stopping. The audit is continuing. A judge ruling today that the people suing to stop the audit, the Arizona State Democratic Party, they didn't provide enough evidence to prove that a restraining order was necessary. But I will say that could change as soon as tomorrow, and here's the reason why. In the same hearing today, the judge also ruled that the people who are running the show inside the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum behind me, a firm called the Cyber Ninjas, they are going to have to make public the documents, the processes, their methods. They're going to have to make that public starting tomorrow. Now, of course, they could appeal that, but if they don't, those documents could then show enough evidence for the plaintiffs to prove that there is harm being done here and they could have standing in their lawsuit. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Again, the bottom line here is that audit is continuing. There will be no pause there. It is going uninterrupted, but the processes going on here, they will have to be made public starting tomorrow if there is no appeal.
And Matt, one of the central questions we heard from them yesterday in that press conference was timing, when this will wrap up, if they are on schedule. Do we have an update on the number of ballots that they've gone through?
You know, that's a really good question. It's actually something that a lot of the reporters around here have been trying to nail down. We heard from the Senate's liaison for the audit, former Secretary of State of Arizona, Ken Bennett. He said just under 100,000 ballots had already been recounted. Now, here's a reminder. There are 2.1 million ballots inside the Veterans Memorial Coliseum behind me that they have to count. So just under 100,000 would mean there are still around 2 million ballots left to be counted. They are in this building until May 14th, which means they would have to average 170 to 180,000 or so ballots a day to meet that deadline. They say they're on track, but I can't tell you for sure if they are because we have not gotten solid numbers about how many ballots have been counted. But here's what I can tell you. That deadline, as far as I know, is a firm deadline of May 14th. It's a Friday, and I'll tell you why, because starting on Monday, May 17th, a local high school here in Phoenix, they're going to start having graduations here at the Coliseum, and they have been told those graduations are on track as scheduled. So they have to be out of here by May 14th. Whether or not they're done counting the ballots, we don't know yet.
And Matt, just lastly for you, we're previewing here on News Now from Fox. We spoke to Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs a little bit earlier. Her office is trying to get representatives inside the Coliseum to also observe and monitor. What do we know about that front? Is that in court as well?
Well, Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, she hasn't been shy. She does not believe that this audit is legitimate whatsoever. So attorneys for her office, they requested, and the judge has seemingly granted them access to the audit site behind me. But what he did say is he would like her office and the auditors to come up with a deal. That deal was supposed to be struck this evening at 5, but if it wasn't, that could also be taken to court with motions being heard as soon as tomorrow. When I did speak to her, it was around 3:30 in the afternoon local time. She said she hadn't heard, and her office hadn't heard from the auditors at that time, but she said she was confident that the judge would rule in their favor if it does go to court, and they are adamant about wanting to be inside and inspect the site. So I don't know as of right now if a deal has been struck, but if it hasn't, again, that will go to court.
All right, Fox 10's Matt Galka there live for us in Phoenix covering this audit of 2.1 million ballots in Maricopa County, the lingering effects of the 2020 election. Matt, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to take a quick commercial break, but did want to preview our conversation with the Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs. We'll have that conversation in 2 minutes. Welcome back here to News Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft, and we are going to now go into that interview that I was previewing before the break, my conversation with Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs. We're going to talk everything going on with that audit in Maricopa County with the ballots. News Now from Fox. I'm being joined by the Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs. So great to see you again here on the program.
Great to be here, thanks.
There's been so much news in the last couple of weeks in Maricopa County as the Arizona State Senate voted to authorize the audit into the 2.1 million ballots from the 2020 election. And that's when we last spoke to you, the day that those ballots were certified. You know, this audit is happening as two others have already taken place. What was wrong with those two audits?
Well, there was nothing wrong with those two audits. And let me just say, those two audits were conducted over and above what we've already done to, as part of the regular election processes, to complete and certify the election results. We've done pre and post-election logic and accuracy tests on all of the equipment, not just in Maricopa County, but throughout the state, as well as hand count audits in each county following the election in each county. And then Maricopa County did these additional two audits on the top of that.
Now, kind of the spokesperson for this ongoing audit right now is former Secretary of State Ken Bennett, who used to have your job. He says logic and accuracy tests essentially are not real audits. He rejects those previous two audits. What's the difference between what they're doing now and what a logic and accuracy test is?
Well, what they're doing right now is a fishing expedition, right? I don't know what they're doing because they have not to date provided any procedures covering what they're doing with the equipment. LNA test is specifically with the equipment. Right now, the equipment is in a room that is secure from everyone. We don't know who's in there. We don't know what they're doing. They're not allowing press or observers in this room. There's no cameras in that room. So I can't tell you what they're doing, but I can tell you that the LNA testing has been a part of elections in Arizona for a while. It is a industry standard accepted way to ensure that election equipment is working the way that it's supposed to. And our election procedures manual added an additional logic and accuracy test following the election to add additional assurances to the process. There is an LNA test is absolutely 100% a way to ensure that election equipment is working the way that it's supposed to. And what they're doing right now is, I don't know what they're doing right now, but for the former secretary to say that an LNA test is inadequate is absolutely astounding to me.
And let's talk about their methodology. They've kind of contracted this independent company called Cyber Ninjas, and so no one from the county nor your office is there at the Phoenix Memorial Coliseum observing or consulting. There's been some legal action taken today. A motion to seal that data and those methodologies was denied by a judge. And so do you think we'll get an insight into how they are conducting this? Because from what you just said, you don't know how they're conducting this.
Right, exactly. So I mean, my understanding is the judge's order compels them to provide that information to us, to the public, so that people know what's going on in there. But yeah, and you mentioned that we haven't been in there. We have not been invited in there, and so we have legal or election experts on the ground that are ready to go and observe as soon as we have the green light to do that. We offered early on in this process to work with these national, independent, nonpartisan election experts to help craft the process which would be taking place, and there was no response to that outreach.
But you do have legal action pending at the moment to get members of your office into the room, isn't that right? I believe a judge wants that to happen per a ruling today. You have some time, I believe, by tomorrow to respond.
I think it's 5 p.m. tonight.
Okay. Are you confident that the judge will grant that?
Well, I think my understanding is that it's up to us to work this out with the other parties involved, and if we don't resolve it ourselves, the judge will rule one way or the other to allow that access.
Can we talk about, Secretary, how did they get the ballots in the first place? I know the state Senate authorized for this to happen. Does the county essentially have to hand them over? How does that process work?
Well, the Senate issued a subpoena. They actually issued two, because the first one they issued wasn't valid because it wasn't issued during the legislative session. So they got into session, issued a second subpoena. Maricopa County provided gigabytes of information trying to satisfy the requirements of the subpoena without actually turning over the ballots, because the legal advice they were getting from their attorney is that it would violate state law if they did so. So this went to court, and a judge ruled in favor of the Senate's ability to subpoena these ballots, and Maricopa County supervisors declined to appeal that ruling. So that's where we are today, and you know, what was apparent from the get-go when that subpoena was upheld is that the Senate didn't know what to do once it was granted, and they didn't have a plan in place of how they were going to conduct this whole exercise, and they've really been making it up as they go along.
Now, what they say is this is to restore the integrity of elections in the state of Arizona. You're the chief administrator of elections in Arizona. Is that an indictment on your leadership, in their words?
Well, here's the thing, that the way to, we wouldn't be in this position of needing to restore voter confidence if elected officials across the state had stood up for the integrity of the election from day one. We operated this election according to election laws that this legislature passed. And so now these politicians are just using this exercise because it fits a political agenda that they have. And we wouldn't need to be worried about restoring voter confidence if they hadn't continued to promote the misinformation, the conspiracy theories that were all found baseless after this election.
And you know, there have been so many questions that reporters are trying to get to the bottom of, not only with the methodology of how they are conducting this, but also funding streams as well into how this is being paid for. You know, if it were up to your office, it would just be the Arizona taxpayer doing this. Do you have any insight into the funding streams for this audit?
Well, first of all, if it was up to my office, we wouldn't be doing this this so-called audit, because it's not necessary. We've done the audits that showed that the election was valid and free of fraud. So so I want to make that really clear. What was clear from when the scope of work was made available, and it said that the price tag on this was $150,000. I think most people looked at that and thought they don't know what they're doing if they think they can conduct this scope of work for $150,000. Clearly, they can't. They're soliciting private donations. The public has a right to know who's paying for this and what the ultimate price tag is going to be. I don't think we'll ever have that information. There could be people from Russia funding this right now. We are not going to know that because the money's going directly to cyber ninjas. I don't think there's anything that can compel them to provide that information publicly.
And just lastly for you, Secretary, are you concerned, you know, say at the end of all of this, well, they don't have much time. We heard last night they have done a little less than 100,000 of the ballots so far in the 4 days since they've started. They have until May 14th. You know, say they do find slight irregularities or what have you. Are you concerned that they will run with that in an effort to kind of undermine future elections? Give me a sense of what will you be looking for after this is all done?
Well, I mean, of course I'm concerned about that. And that's one of the reasons that it's really important to make the procedures and what they're doing transparent so that we know what they're doing. These are not election experts. These are not auditing experts. And, you know, again, they're making this up as they go along. But if we have a clear picture of what they're doing, then we can understand, like, where they came at their information, which you know, I suspect might differ from the actual election results because they're trying to find something. And, you know, the reason I would like to have people in there is to be able to see what's going on, so we can address those issues.
And they would come back with their cameras around the Coliseum inside that people can watch virtually. But just want to get the last word here for you. You know, what do you think about the integrity of elections? You know, they say half of Arizonans don't have confidence. As Secretary of State, how can you better restore confidence if that is the case?
Well, that number is wrong. There's been polling done that it is not half of Arizonans. It is a small percentage of, I think, the Republican electorate. And it's because the elected leaders, not me, but continue to promote the big lie. And these people believe them. As long as they're going to continue to lie and people are going to believe them, we're going to have issues there. What we're going to do is continue to tell the truth about what happened in this election. We're going to continue to provide information to the public in an open, transparent way so that they can access that. And we're going to work to make sure that voters are getting their election information from those trusted sources, which are election officials.
Would you want Governor Doug Ducey to speak out a little more about this process that's going on?
You know, he's going to do what he's going to do. He stood by the election results. He did his job and certified them. And I'm thankful that happened.
All right. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs joining us here on News Now from Fox, breaking all of that down. We'll see you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was my conversation there a little bit earlier today with the Arizona Secretary of State, but we wanted to just go right into these live pictures. We're still following the North Fire near Santa Clarita in California. Evacuations underway. It looks like it is spreading at the moment, but fire crews are working around the clock to battle this. We'll give